Going to assume that you're all there and can hear me okay, hopefully. The usual thing, I have no idea whether we are coming across or not. So hello to those of you that are waiting. If you just drop something on the text, then I know at least we're making contact, and that'll be great. So good. Hi, Julie. Good to see you. Good to see you. Can you hear me all right? Just let me know if it's all working across okay. It's quite a lot of delay on this as well. That's always... Hello, Memory Bubble. Going to answer your question today. It's good to see you there. So, in fact, okay, let's get going because I'm going to assume that you can hear okay. How are you, JF? Good man. I'm very well, thank you. We've got a lovely, bright, sunny afternoon today for a change here in Yorkshire. Wendy, hello. Good to see you. Yeah, from Catalonia. Right, wonderful. I'm sure you'll be adding something to this, Wendy, as we go along. All okay, that's great. Thanks, Julie. Thank you very much. So, welcome. Before I forget, for the few of you that are here at the moment and anybody watching this on playback, there won't be a live next Monday. Okay, so there won't be a live next Monday, but we'll pick it up again the following week. So that will be Monday, the 30th of September. So we'll do this one today, 45 minutes to an hour, something like that. We'll see how we get on. And then we'll be picking it up again in 2 weeks' time. 2 weeks' time. I'm only laughing because my maths almost failed me 1 and 2, and there you go. So lovely to have you along. I'm aware that it's been a bit of a funny old morning for me, and I completely forgot to sort of notify early that I was coming on to the live stream. So I suspect we won't get as many as usual, but that doesn't matter. Socrates, Stefan, good to see you. Great, thank you. Glad you could join us. So we're gonna. I just want to kind of ease into this a little bit, and then we've got several questions. I've got about 4 questions or so that have been posed during the week. Hello, Melinda. Good to see you. One of them has been asked by Memory Bubble, and that really is the one that is allowing us to use this title of Dowsing as a subjective process. But before we go into that, just to kind of lead into that aspect of, how dowsing is absolutely not an objective process, I just want to reiterate that everything that I do on this channel is derived and based upon my own personal experience. And again, people like Wendy. Hello, Lena. No, you made it. Great. That's good. Great. Classic. Well done. That's your intuition working, Lena. That's nice. Nice to have you along. So I'm going to highlight Wendy again because Wendy has a terrific subjective experience with the subtle energies and working with the personalities of Earth energy and of the space in which we all live. Now, we can go from those abilities and those experiences that we have, which are very, very personal, to being somebody that is not yet, shall we say, at that stage of interacting with the subtle energies and not comfortable necessarily with interacting with the subtle energies around us on a personality-based format. What do I mean by that? I mean, I guess that we can experience working with the universe in that kind of sense of, Abraham Hicks, all of that sort of thing. And indeed, as Stevie, hello, good to see you. Voican, who might join us later on if he's available. Voican is a great Seth follower, the words of Seth. And I've, throughout my years of communicating with my own personal spirit guide is what I was going to say, which is an odd expression. Merlin is my guide, okay? So I call him Merthin, and there are various reasons why I refer to him as his Welsh name. But a lot of the teachings that he was giving me from way back, some 10 years ago, fall in line with what Seth says in the Seth volumes. And I can't remember who channeled Seth, but I'm sure somebody would pop it there. That's Jasper, who's joining us today. And so Seth has been a name that has come up a lot right from the start, right from day one of me working with my guide. Now, I've been sort of deliberately trying to avoid looking at the Seth stuff because I don't want to contaminate or kind of cross-reference what he says with what I believe to be some of the workings of the subtle realms. Now, and it sounds a bit silly, but I don't want to do that until, or rather I had chosen not to do that until I'd actually written, Jane Roberts, thank you, Stevie, thank you. Jane Roberts is the channel that channels Seth. I didn't want to get familiar with Seth's words until I'd written down what I had learned and kind of taken on board from my guides and from my experience and my conversations with Jane, the guardian energy in the house that we used to live in. But I've realized that actually I am being kind of told to look at the works of Seth by the management, and I'm going, no, I'm not going to look at them. No, I'm not going to look at them. But actually, it makes a lot of sense for me to look at them. I'm currently writing the book about this experience that I had with Jane, and then moving on into the work with Merlin, and then developing into the subtle energies that we work with, right? So it's sort of a base, a foundation really for people that are interested in how did I get to where we are today. And it's going to make it a lot easier for me to actually relate to that stuff of Seth. Hello, Mel, good to see you. Maria, you made it, well done. So to relate to the words of Seth, and I think what I'm going to do is to actually look at the similarities and to use that as some structure for the book, because otherwise what I don't want to do is just to write a book that says, oh, I'm Tim, I did this, I had this experience, it showed me X, Y, Z, which could actually be, quite frankly, quite monotonous and boring. And a lot of people produce books like that, which we think are interesting for people, but really the most interesting part of writing a book like that is for the writer themselves. So I want to write something and get something out there, the experience of having spirit come into my life like it did, and the way that it made such a difference to who I am and to what I'm doing. You know, I wouldn't be here now if it hadn't been, and I mean that in several senses. It made such a difference to my life that this is why I'm sitting here now talking to other people about the subtle energies of life, because I know that it can turn one from being a quite depressed, nearly going off the rails type character to having some understanding of how great life is and what a blessing it is for all of us. And I think that simple truth which sounds trite, doesn't it? It does sound really trite when I say it like that. But to really, you know, each and every one of us has a different way into the subtle energies, and each and every one of us is accessing them at a different depth, at a different level, but we're all finding the same sort of responses. And of course we are, because it's the nature of being human. And that's really what this whole channel's about. All I wanted to do to start with was just to express some thoughts that I've been having this morning, I guess, really. And it brings us right round to memory bubble, if you're still there, to your question. So now this was written 5 days ago, and for some reason YouTube comments is quite, it's not a great system. It's quite clunky. It's not anywhere near as effective as something like Facebook, and we just accept that. And so it's lovely actually in the synchronicities that can occur through things like that, through the complications of some processes, that actually this question only jumped out at me today. I hadn't even seen it before. And what Memory Bubble says, I don't know whether you're male or female, it doesn't really matter. So they say, hope you can answer they would like my view on dowsing. They say, I recently bought some dowsing rods. I think that's a dowsing rod or a pendulum, I'm not sure. So they relax, they're conscious, they keep their hands still so as not to influence the movement, and they have been receiving legit answers, that's what they say. And it feels like the rods tap into an aware intellectual energy I feel around me. What are your thoughts on this? Thanks, they say. So it's dowsing rods, we're using dowsing rods. Now, So yes, absolutely. I mean, really, it's really, really interesting that you express it like that, because it feels like the rods tap into an aware intellectual energy I feel around me. Intellectual, interesting choice of word. Great. Okay. Hello, Lawrence. Good to see you. I'll be answering one of your questions a little bit later on. So, memory bubble. It feels like the rods tap into an aware intellectual energy. Now, some people refer to the... Okay, let's just go back another step. If we look at this from scientific terms, scientific point of view, just for a moment, it's not terribly scientific, any of this stuff, because science is looking at the objective nature of reality, whereas we're looking at the subjective. But Einstein, we go back to Einstein, and he was, let me just get some of this light off. He was, he worked at that time, science was looking at what they call the ether, right? So this invisible field that connected everything. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? And the notion of the ether was actually thrown out, and science generally doesn't accept that there's an ether connecting everything. But of course, now what we find in quantum physics, etc., is that everybody, yes, of course, everybody's looking at the field, the quantum field of existence, and that in a way has replaced the ether. But you see, what's interesting about your question, memory bubble, is that it feels like your rods tap into an aware intellectual energy. Now, that field, that quantum field of everything, connectivity, that quantum field of information in formation, so everything is formed from that quantum field, is sometimes referred to as the intelligent ether. And it's called the intelligent ether because it feels as though it is there responding to us. And the reason it feels like that is fundamentally because more and more what we're learning to appreciate, or what science and neuroscientists are learning to take on board, examine. I mean, I'm not saying that they're all buying into this, but they're looking at this possibility that the brain is literally just the modem. It's literally just the mechanical part of us as a receiver and transmitter that plugs into all the information. Hello, being Doris. Good to see you. So the brain is the thing that allows us access to the information. And when we're all of that information being held in that quantum field or intelligent ether. So when we're dowsing, we access that field because we're framing logical questions. Dowsing is the most logical aspect of working with our intuition because we do. It's a two-part thing. We use our logical minds to frame the questions, to think about closed questions so that we can get a yes or no response. Now, when we're dowsing, again, as Memory Bubble says, you need to relax and be in that meditative state and still be aware. Hello, Kathy, good to see you. Still be aware of everything that is going on around you. And in fact, in the book, In Spirit and Earth, for those of you that haven't picked up a copy of that, there's a little piece in there where my colleague Adrian and I were doing some experiments with the very simple sort of EEG brain scan type stuff, the skull caps that you can get now and plug into laptops, with a bit of software called the Mind Mirror. And what we were showing there and demonstrating and discovering for ourselves, in fact, in that instance, was that we do have to be in that meditative state to be able to connect, to be able to receive the information from the intelligent ether. But part of the power and the skill of being fully immersed in that meditative state is to also be fully aware and fully conscious, and fully conscious in terms of acutely aware of things going on around you. And that's what we try and achieve when we're dowsing. So, memory bubble. When I'm, basically, yes is the answer to your question. So, what do I think of what you've written and the way that you express your feeling of connecting into the informational field? I think, yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what you're doing. And it really is up to you as an individual receptive collection of cells. I mean, that's almost getting into Bruce Lipton speak, but you know what I mean. You are a collection of cells all working together, a collection of energy vortices all working together as a form, as an informational structure, and you're accessing information in that energy field, in that intelligent ether. So what science is saying, and what I was going to say earlier on, was that neuroscientists are learning that is the case. They can use, you know, as we know, they can use an EEG machine, which has the pickup points, the receptors actually physically touching the skull. And there's another machine, which is a MEG machine, which they can use to analyze brain wave patterns, but it's out here and it's working with the magnetic fields that are created within the brain. And so they're already establishing that the receptors are out here and that there's fields going in and out. So it's not like, as science used to traditionally say, that the mind is encased within the fortress of the skull. The mind is not encased within the fortress of the skull, because this MEG machine is picking up fields of energy that are being emitted from the brain, inside the brain. So the mind, the thinking processes are not restrained within the fortress of the skull. And therefore, what philosophers, and in fact a neuroscientist called Donald Hoffman, who is somebody that I would recommend you all Google, Donald Hoffman, they are exploring now finally this approach to neuroscience, to say, okay, the brain, or rather information is out there, the brain acts as the connecting device. It is the modem, it is the cell phone, if you like, that plugs into the field of information. Right, so that having been said, so for one person, that might feel like plugging into the etheric field, to the intelligent ether. Now, one of the expressions that a lot of dowsers use, which we touched on last time, was the higher self. So when in terms of spiritual dowsing, when one is dowsing, one can say that one is in touch with one's higher self. We are asking the questions of our higher self. Now, what is the higher self? Well, we touched on this last time. Well, hang on. Yeah, great. It's a good question, JF. We'll talk about that in a sec. Higher self, well, to me, the way that I express higher self is to use the expression soul self, because I feel that we do definitely still retain our connection to our soul, that aspect of self that will allow, stays connected to God, effectively. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. And within that process of being connected to your higher self or your soul self, if you are of the type of physiology that will communicate with personalities, so perhaps we're easier we just naturally personify things more than other people. Okay, if we're of that type of functionality as a physical being, JF, then that is the way that we will interconnect with the informational field. If we're not, if we're less inclined to be kind of people orientated in that sense, then we will probably maintain this feeling that we're either contacting a generic field of energy or something that's less person orientated. Hey, Dixie, well done, good man. And so actually, just sidetracking slightly back onto the overall area of well-being, it relates to what JF has asked there. Why do we need a body? The point of us of living a spiritual life very often is actually to bring the physical body into a balance as it progresses through life. Now, traditionally, spirituality hasn't really kind of sunk into people until they're well into adulthood. And to be frank, usually as they're approaching end of life, because, hello, Joseph, good to see you again. End of life, because obviously thoughts turn to what happens next as I step from this world, what happens next? And therefore spirituality and interest in spirituality comes to the fore. Now, these days, of course, what we're seeing is a lot of younger people are, I mean, almost out of necessity, looking at what's this thing, spirituality? And it's kind of like a little bit of a wave coming through society globally, fortunately, now that younger people are looking at it. And as long as it doesn't just become like an internet fad, it's a really, really, really good thing. And the point of all of this is that any form of spirituality is incredibly personal, because it is absolutely reliant upon the subjective experience in which one is having this spiritual experience. Now, I had been dowsing for years and years and years and years before anybody even came up with the word spiritual into my life, and I never considered it as a spiritual practice. The only reason I think that I now would term what I do as spiritual practice, I'll come to you in a sec, Wendy, there, that's great, thanks for commenting, is because I tend to ask questions of spirit guides. And I am asking questions, and I'm very aware of my spirit guide, Merlin, when I'm dowsing and doing house healing work. In fact, these days, as I dowse, I've said for a long time on a lot of the videos that have been up online, is that the dowsing, when I'm in the dowsing frame of mind, this comes back to your question, Memory Bubble, when I'm in the dowsing frame of mind, I am not aware of what the pendulum is doing. I'm more aware of rods. I tend to be working outside when I'm using rods, but if I'm working at my desk doing the house healing work, I'm not aware of what that pendulum is really doing. What I'm aware of, and these days, this is what I was going to say, was that I actually feel that Merlin comes right in here. And if I look at my hand when it's on the floor plan and my presence, I'm feeling like it's him doing it. If I feel a really good connection to the house, even if it's on the other side of the world, I don't feel as though it's me. And this concept of, well, who is me, becomes quite blurred. And I'm not saying that I'm anything special. I'm just saying that this is where I am at the moment. It's like, well, what is this person, Tim? So I think this will probably, what does Wendy say here? So higher self is love. All right, yeah. When I connect with energetic personalities, we meet with Namaste and our connection in love. There is no separation at that level. Yes. Hello, Reese boy. Hi. Oh, Nathan, good man. Reese boy. Right, excellent. At least that's easier. So Wendy, yes, perfect. Yes, you are absolutely connecting in love. And of course, the connection in love is absolutely fundamental to it, because when we are expressing that love and experiencing that love, that is absolutely coming through the heart chakra, isn't it? And that is what we being blunt, that's what we need to work on, to be at peace in the world. What can I say? It absolutely is. Now, it's interesting, Wendy, you see, when you've written that, and I'm just going to read it again. So Wendy says, for me, higher self is love. When I connect with energetic personalities, we meet with Namaste, our connection in love. There is no separation at that level. See, that's a beautiful description. And to me, that takes me back to some of the encounters that I've had with those in spirit. And that is the joy of those connections, because it really does open up that love. And there is no judgment whatsoever in that space. And it's beautiful. I use these words and they sound corny, but it is beautiful. And that, if you want to be going into the spiritual aspect of dowsing, of working with spirit personalities that are contained within the informational field, within the quantum field, within the etheric field, then that's really where you're going to go. You're going to feel that buzz. So memory bubble, that's the same for you. You're saying you feel a buzz through your body, tapping into something, and that something is feeding back. Sounds great. Sounds great. Sounds like you're really into the physical feelings as well. So because you're verbalizing or writing there about physical feelings, which is excellent. And the bottom line, it comes back round to this terrific subjective, qualitative aspect of the individual experience. I say qualitative like that because science is quantitative. It doesn't include the quality, the depth of a feeling, for example. So they would be able to say, Pip, hi, you must, well, not necessarily, it might not be right up your street. You must remind me of your name and I'll call you by your proper name, but otherwise it's Pip. And I've completely forgotten where I was. Yeah, qualitative. So science is not qualitative. It can say, look at the brain and identify and draw the correlation between part of the brain that does X, Y, Z. Deals with the vision of the right eye, for example, or something. There's a video out there, again, featuring Donald Hoffman, who is talking very specifically about his work as a neuroscientist. And that's exactly what they do. They put an intense magnetic field on part of the brain. It affects the vision. So, Jill, thanks. So, that's quantitative, because it says, right, something happens. There's a correlation there between doing that and this happening. Whereas what we're looking at in the subjective nature of reality is the depth of the feeling, or the depth of the change, or the depth of love. Hey. Good man, Voiken. Good to see you. I don't know how you're getting out of work so early, but it's great to see you. So all of these experiences now are qualitative. Now, just referring back to Pip, to Jill there with her channel, the ASMR stuff that she does there is all about that kind of that sense of physical response. And again, coming back to what JF was asking earlier on, so why have we got bodies? Well, because actually part of our purpose of being here is to contain our spiritual energy within the physical form, because this is where we learn the lessons that we have agreed to go through and learn while we're here in this energy environment, because these lessons that we learn here cannot be learned in the other dimensions. They require the physical. And I mean, this is a fantastic layer of awareness to be existing in. And I'm tempted to say it's a very base level, but actually, if we think about, okay, let's go a little bit woo-woo here, a little bit further woo-woo. If we think about the stone people, the rock people, the people of the earth, literally, they do not have the depth of sensuality that we actually can enjoy. You can talk, if you go to a sacred site with standing stones, let's say there's a dozen standing stones in that sacred site in a sacred stone circle, you can very easily, with dowsing, have a conversation with each of those stones. I mean, literally, you can have a conversation with each of those stones, and you can feel the different personality of each of those stones. Now, of course, stone people. So this is what I'm saying. It's the energy of the stones, the energy of the rocks. If we take, for example, I have here on my desk a little stone. Now, this particular stone is I really like this stone. It jumped out at me. I can't even remember where I got it from. I've had it for years and years and years. I have it on my desk. Now, to be frank, I haven't actually spoken to this little stone. I haven't had conversations with this one, but I love having it here. And it almost is like in the way that I love having Jasper, the dog. She's just literally down there, look. But I'll have a conversation with Jasper, I'll have a conversation with this stone. But if you go to a sacred site and you are tuned in enough and you go to those stones, there's a video on that I made a couple of months ago about visiting Long Meg and her daughters, which is a stone circle here in the north of England. And you can just stand with the stones. It doesn't matter whether you stand with your back to them or with your front and hug them or whatever you want to do, but in the same way as you can have a conversation with a tree. There's a character within each stone that's different. So you can talk to the stones themselves, as well as talking to the guardian of the site, of course, if you want to. Yeah, Stonehenge material. Well, hey, Wolf, not keen on Stonehenge, but there you go. So, okay, memory bubble. I think we've well and truly covered that one. Somebody did ask actually a little while ago, do you have to kind of lean against the stone in a particular way to get that kind of connection? Not really necessarily. Hello, Carol. Well done. From way down in Southampton or Portsmouth, Southampton, I think it was. That's a long way from home for you. You don't have to. The important thing of connecting is to connect again through your heart. It's the heart that has to be open, the intentions being set to communicate, and you do that in love, and that is the connection. That's how you're going to be able to maybe at first just catch flashes of voices. Flashes of voices doesn't make sense, but you know, brief snippets of voices. That's the way to do it. Diggsy, who placed those stones there first? Depends on which which kind of site you're talking about, really, to be honest. Yeah, I bet you do. No, fantastic. That's great. That's absolutely brilliant. Thanks, Memory Bubble, on that one. So I'm going to move on. And Lawrence, who's with us this afternoon, asked a question, and Nathan might like to kind of join in on this one as well. Lawrence asked, can a spirit be scared or frightened even if they communicate on a regular basis? Now, I know that Lawrence was communicating with Dowsing to a couple of spirits. One of them was very fun and was being humorous with him. And I'll come to that in a sec, Nathan. And I'm thinking that the other one, perhaps, Lawrence, have you found it, is the other one that is scared? It's very common to come across souls that haven't moved on. Again, this is kind of echoing what we talked about last week a little bit. Souls that haven't moved on, spirits that haven't moved on, quite often haven't done so because they feel guilty of what they've done in this life, or they're still waiting for somebody. I mean, this is one of the classics. Again, a lot of ghost stories are kind of built around the idea that, you know, the soul of the wife doesn't move on. The soul, you know, a wife and a miner, for example. I mean, it's very sexist me using this example, but the wife staying at home while the male goes down the pit. You know, if there's been a disaster at the pit and he's been killed, the ghost of the wife doesn't necessarily want to move on because she's always been at home waiting for the return of the husband. You know, there's that love connection in that sense. It's an example. But we do find that there are souls that actually are staying in their environment that they're familiar with, and that because they're waiting. Oh, Nick, that's a good question. Nice to see you there. So that's one about waiting. That's a spirit. So in other words, we can talk to that spirit that's waiting, that hasn't passed through to the light. But quite often we find that those spirits that are in the dreary drudgery of limbo, which is what we talked about last time, purgatory, they can be quite scared. They can be quite scared now, because they don't know what's happened and they don't understand why. Sometimes, you know, if you get a haunting, then most often the reason that there's a haunting is, well, if it's an active, like poltergeist type haunting, that kind of active environment, then it's quite often because the spirit is trying to get the attention of people, and it doesn't understand why people aren't talking to it in the same way as they used to. And the answer is because they're dead. So therefore, they do all sorts of things and try to work with stuff and use an amazing amount of energy sometimes to break things and smash doors closed and all this sort of thing to get somebody's attention. So they are quite often quite scared and worried. So yes, Lawrence, they can be. And they will communicate on a regular basis, because if you start talking to somebody who thinks, oh, hang on, this person knows I'm here, finally, then the spirit is going to carry on talking, and they will probably say, at some stage, if you're asking the right questions, it depends how you're connecting to them. If you're able to absorb quite a lot of conversation either as part of the dowsing or just with that kind of natural mediumistic tendency, then you can get a lot of information from a spirit. And if they need to be moved on, then you can either do it yourself. Just always put the protection on, the chakra psychic protection exercise. Always do that first, and then you can either simply, if you're, there's two ways, right? If you have a good relationship with the spirit of place where you live or where you encounter such spirits, ghosts, trapped souls, you can simply ask the spirit of place, your guardian of that space, to do that, to help that spirit pass over. We did that a couple of times in our old house before I realized that we could learn to do it ourselves. I just used to ask Jane. We found a little girl once in our house, a little spirit girl, and she wanted to move on, clearly. And so Jane did that, and off she went. So, or the second way is you do it yourself, and you simply bubble up, do the chakra protection exercise, ask for guidance from the heavens, ask the archangels to be present, in particular Archangel Michael, I would suggest, and you just ask them to open the portal for the soul that is here, and you just ask and just express your desire that the spirit can move on, and reassure the spirit that they're not going to be met with any form of judgment. The only judgment that seems to occur when they pass through to that side of the veil is a self-judgment, a self-assessment. In that same way we were talking earlier on about love not being judgmental, when you're on that side of the veil, the love that is there is not judgmental in that sense. It is about assisting the energy that has just passed into the new space, and then to make decisions about what it wants to do next in consultation with the above. Dolmens, well, there are all sorts of theories, aren't they? Nathan, sorry, try that. Will they still be problematic if you connect with them? Well, you need to do your protection exercise, so that you're not connecting with them and allowing them to kind of latch onto you as a, rather like in that way that if you're going to rescue a drowning person, then sometimes you have to kind of cosh them out and take them away so that they don't drown you. What can happen with a scared spirit is that they will attach to your auric field because they see salvation in that sense, and they think this person can help me, and they don't want to lose this person. So therefore, that's why you do the protection exercise, and you make sure that once you've done any work with spirit like that, that you're clear and you have no connections to any of it, right? Nick, how often in your experience have ancient spirits come through? Well, I mean, you're more likely to find ancient spirits if you're at a sacred site. However, we know that land is used through the millennium, and we never know where we're going to find an ex-sacred site, which sometimes still has very ancient spirits in it. I mean, the spirits and souls on the first section of the house healing list that we go through, that we douse for, to find what are the detrimental aspects that are affecting the house owner or the people present. The first section of that is about ghosts, spirits, trapped souls. And we can find ghosts and trapped souls from going way back in history. But again, this comes back round to the intelligent ether and the quantum field and the way that we interact with it. And this give you an answer, Voikan, Full Monty, in this as well. Because one of the things we've talked about before, which is one of the amazing things, is that we can talk about how we are ourselves creators, co-creators, transmitters, receivers of infinite possibility. Now, one of the things that Jane, the guardian in the house years ago, said, and very early on she said, because it was very, very clear that her presence there was all about the nature of manifesting, the nature of creation. This was what blew my mind to start with. And one of the things is that intelligent ether, that quantum field, is, as we know, described as that quantum field of infinite possibility. So if you have nurtured and developed a belief system that believes in 100%, okay, I'll take it off slightly at a tangent, in ET, then the chances of you coming across ET life forms in the other dimensions is higher, much, much higher than somebody that has less strong belief of it. So therefore, if we put it back into our context here now, and we're talking about if we absolutely, completely, 100% believe in spiritual personalities within these realms next to ours, within these dimensions next to ours, then the chances are that we will find them there, because the intelligent ether allows us to find them there, because they are possible. We can't find things that we don't. Okay, that's an interesting one. We can't find things that are not possible, but the boundaries of possibility constantly move and change. If you think about the spiritual truth that there is only now, then the boundaries of what is possible are constantly changing. And of course, that really is one of the foundation stones of quantum healing, if that is still a thing. And I never looked into that sufficiently to find out whether it was pucker or whether it was a bit of a marketing exercise. But I believe, from what you're probably reacting, some of you going, "What? Of course it's real." So the magic of the quantum realm is that actually, and this is acknowledged by science, is that it appears to be infinite possibility. And that's where you get the scientific theory of the many worlds theory, right? So what we're saying is, basically, I can't remember quite how we got onto that, but if you believe in spirits, you will find spirits. That does not mean to say that they are made up. They are present. They are part of your individual subjective reality. All of us on this channel are sharing an interest in this sort of spiritual relationship to our lives. And so therefore, we are exploring in this lifetime, what is it like to have this experience? And that's part of the point. It's not about saying, oh, am I making this up or am I not making this up? It's about, what does this experience, what does this interaction in that moment of now mean to me? Subjective, personal, information field interaction. What does that interaction mean to me? See, if you came, Maria, I'm not sure whether you're still there or not, but when we do workshops, Maria's been on a workshop, that's why I mentioned her. And I was going to say that if you came on a workshop here to this house, then we would experience, yes, great. So we would experience my guide's presence. Now, I know some of you, like Nathan, like, hello, Sanya, nice to see you. Nathan would and Diggsy would love it if I could bring Merlin through at this point, at this time. But actually, increasingly what's happening is that he's just naturally talking through me anyway. So half of the stuff of what we're talking about and saying in these lives is him. It comes from him. But it's just that he doesn't come across in quite such a in-your-face way that he used to. So what I was saying was that Maria used to be, Maria came on a workshop some couple of years ago, and I'm pretty sure that she would have seen, I think we did some of that work then, Maria, or was it just Dowsing? Anyway, doesn't matter. Point being is that you can tell when there's an energy shift within somebody and the spirit energy comes forward more, right? Okay. Hello, Gary. Good to see you. Right. So, Yeah. Okay. So this Rebecca, hi, nice to see you. Good, lovely, nice to have you here. Memory bubble. So this aspect of waves. Right. Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay. So yeah. So there was that aspect, and part of that was because the 4 or 5 people in the room at the time when Maria was there, was that we you know we were not expecting, but we were. Our belief systems allowed this energy shift to occur. Okay, and then the significance of it was in that moment. So that's the thing to bear in mind. Coming back, memory bubble. My body always detects a presence or alternative energy which seems to come and go in waves. So the wave, again, you see, brilliant that you're mentioning these things in just the same way as in your question. You mentioned a specific word. Here, the specific word I want to talk about is waves. One of the things that occurred, and you will find it at some point, I expect, and I expect some of you already have experienced this. One of the things I experienced when I went to, I was with Hamish Miller, and I was doing a recce of 7 sacred sites in a day to decide which one we were going to use to film at. So it was the first project I filmed with Hamish, with my dear mentor. And as we walked up to each and every stone circle on that day, there were waves of voices saying welcome. Right now, so memory bubble, waves of voices. They came in waves, and sometimes this connection to spirit. I used to have a connection to Jane where she would come in waves, and it's a you know, our processing is in waves, so don't be surprised by that wave feeling. And sometimes we get connections to energies and they kind of come, it's more like a dollop of energy coming through. It's not really quite as smooth as a lovely gentle wave. It's just like, have some of that, and you know, another one comes through, so it's quite chunky, but that's almost feeling like the connection isn't quite, you know, you're not really quite in the flow with it. It's all a bit lumpy. So waves is very much a character of the way that communication of information exchange. Okay, so I'm all, you know, aware that we jump around quite a lot on topics, and we will have to quickly whiz through some of these other questions. Yeah, great. Okay. Yeah, good. Yeah, excellent. See, perfect. So you're having that conversation there about the presence of spirit, and you can douse them and you can communicate with them. Yes, I did. That's how I learned dowsing, Boykan, Full Monty. That's what I thought dowsing was talking to spirits. That's what we did. No, not Ouija. I've never used a Ouija board, and I don't particularly like Ouija board. Okay, so yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine, Lena. That's absolutely fine. Great, good. Ouija boards are okay if you know what you're doing, and if everybody around the board knows what they're doing, and you've done a protection exercise before you do it, right? Because the worst thing about a Ouija board is that you're sitting there and you actually open up spiritually, and what you're opening up to is not only anything that's in spirit that's around you, which can be a little bit mischievous if you're not careful, but also you're opening up to other people's baggage. Because as soon as you're sitting opposite somebody, then you opening your, you know, any of your chakras, you're opening up your stuff. Your auric field is there, and you know, and so people that don't know what they're doing, they don't understand subtle energy, you just open the floodgates, and you might as well walk down the high street with your wallet in your hand going, hello. Right. So, oh, really? Okay. We will talk tomorrow. Yeah. What you can do, Rebecca, is you can indeed have like a dowsing board with an alphabet, and you can ask questions of spirit with your pendulum. But you know what? You're actually better off either using a pendulum or using a couple of rods and just asking and just learning and allowing yourself to make the mistakes, because spirit will be patient with you, especially if you ask to speak to the guardian spirit of where you live, and you make sure you get that connection. So yeah, I mean, I Ouija board, I'm not great. I don't recommend anybody really does Ouija board. So, but Jane, Rebecca, sorry, you can do the alphabet thing, and you can get responses if you hold a rod over that alphabet, and it will move to letters. It'll be really freaky for you. That's the only time I've ever been scared myself when I did that years ago. But what I recommend is that you learn to work with your dowsing and just ask the questions of the spirit of place. Just takes a little bit longer because you need to be confident in your dowsing before you do that. Let me answer these questions. Lawrence, I think we've covered yours. Bottom line, yes, but you can move it on if it needs to be moved on. Boykan, so we've talked a little bit about this because you said last time that, as a joke, that if we don't see it, it doesn't exist. Well, we've covered that really, because if we don't see it, it could exist. You know, it's that old thing of seeing is believing, believing is seeing, all of those things. We are such a visually based physical system that we prioritize the visual reference. So people always say, did you see that? Sometimes it's, did you hear that? Well, yeah, fine. But most of the time we're always prioritizing the visual sense because that's what we are. We're such a visually driven animal. Yeah, well, actually, JF, good question. I was thinking that Rebecca, I was putting Rebecca into my circumstance of talking to a spirit very early on. And I was thinking, yeah, okay, so actually what I used to do was talk to spirit of place, talk to Jane. You can't, no, absolutely. Talk to your own personal spirit guide. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's interesting. I just dropped into my old location when answering that question. So thanks for pulling me up on that. Feeling is closer to knowing, yes. And in fact, any work with spirit really, you want to be getting into how it feels, the experience in your body of how it feels. You can't really do any serious work with spirit. You can talk to them with dowsing and get dowsing responses, and that's great to a certain extent. But if you want to go deeper and feel that a deeper involvement with spirit that you know, that you've learned to know, you've taken time to get to know, and they are happy to work with you, in other words, your personal spirit guide or spirit of place, then you really need to be feeling that spirit in your body, okay? Because you can develop your feeling so that actually you can almost feel things that are outside of your physical sense. You can feel that, okay? And you want to be able to be aware of your feeling. I don't know whether Merlin is incarnated on Earth. I know that he's doing a heck of a lot of work. There are so many people that have Merlin as their guides. And when I first came across somebody else that had Merlin, I thought, well, he can't have, because he's mine. He's mine. But of course he's not. You know, we're an aspect of him. We are each an individual aspect of a major spirit energy. That's what I personally believe. Fantastic. Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Rebecca, going back onto that, yeah, this is where you can do it with that, and you can have those conversations with your deceased husband using the dowsing, using rods. That you can, what you'll find as you connect to him, and you'll know it's him because you'll feel it's him, right? Is that as you have that conversation, and although, you know, even through the emotion that will come up, probably, you will still maintain that heart connection and be connected to him sufficiently to get good conversational responses. And what you'll find is that your rods will, they'll give a constant yes, no, but you will feel, hear, perceive the conversation that is being had. Okay, that's the way that I used to communicate with Jane, is that it was, again, about not watching the rods. It was about having the conversation, but the conversation occurs in the head. And the more you practice that kind of conversation, and the more you feel their presence, then the more you understand what is being delivered to you from that, in that informational exchange, in that information exchange. Information exchange. Okay, right. So, Sally, now this is a question from the 9th of August, and I really don't know whether I answered this one or not. So Sally made contact on Messenger, and she said, you know that thing when you're going along quietly, minding your own business, and suddenly for a split nanosecond, you're engulfed by the sensation and or memory of being in another time and place. Well, I seem to be getting a lot of these just lately. I love the way that Sally just kind of says, yeah, you know how this happens, you know how you kind of time slip and, stuff. I'm pretty sure everyone gets these from time to time, but since I started meditating every day, I've been getting them more. So I wondered if there's a connection between my meditating and these flashbacks, and if so, why? Now, I want to make it very, very clear that I'm never laughing at anybody. I just think it's really funny, and I love the way that some people are so blasé about, oh yes, well, my world suddenly turned into the 1066 of the Battle of Hastings, and there I was with, X, Y, Z. I just think it's funny. But look, this is a serious question, because these things occur, these time slips occur. And this, I remember this actually, funnily enough, as being one of my early childhood memories of my father talking about, not him, but somebody he had met who described the way that they had been walking along the South Downs in England, and they had suddenly found themselves, bam, in time slipped into the middle of a battle. They literally were there, and they were holding an axe or a sword. They could hear the thundering hooves. They could smell that smell of battle. They were there for, my father said, a split second, and then they were back again into normal everyday life. But these time slips are not unusual. It's a bit like a kind of what you might expect, kind of what's the phrase, flashback from if you've been having a lot of drugs, hallucinogenic drugs. You might suddenly drop into a flashback and be in that kind of hallucinogenic state. Now, it's always possible. That's exactly what Sally is describing here, but I don't think so. That's only logical thought and assumption. But the big thing that I wanted to say is, her real question is, I wondered if there's a connection between my meditating and these flashbacks. And the answer is yes, there is, absolutely 100%, because the more that we actively exercise the meditative process, the more we get into meditating, the more we find it easier to drop into that widening of conscious experience, then the more scope of conscious experience comes to us. That's a kind of a clumsy way of saying the more you meditate, the more you're going to experience in these subtle realms. It's as simple as that. And again, I've said it before, when I started meditating and started communicating with spirit directly, my spirit guide directly, and I was having intensive instructions from a teacher, a medium, that's when I saw the ETs lots of greys on lots of different occasions. And I simply asked, should I be seeing these things? And she said, well, it's up to you to choose what it is that you're tuning into. Not at the time being interested in ET, I chose not to continue seeing them. So, the quick answer to Sally's question is yes, there's absolutely a connection between meditating and the flashbacks. But that's one of the reasons to continue meditating, not to stop it. And that's why meditating, and I keep banging on about it all the time, is that meditating is really good for dowsing, really good for being a good dowser, really good for being mindful. It just underpins all of these experiences. It is the mind-body link. It's the power of the mind. It's really important. I mean, my meditating practice occasionally, quite often goes to pot in terms of I don't sit regularly at a regular time. I sit in the same place usually to meditate, but I'm working with clients, working on floor plans and house healing and going into meditation for that specific reason. It's very rare these days that I actually sit and just meditate for my own benefit, and I should, being blunt, I should do more of it. Right. So you've all been having a nice chat there. Let's just see if I can catch up a little bit before we draw this to a close. Lena, Rebecca could read your mind. Bear that in mind as well. Yeah. I mean, spirit does. I mean, that's they will take. I mean, especially if it's a close relative or a friend, you know, if somebody you were close to that's passed that you're communicating with, there's always that innate connection. It's almost, well, I was going to say it's almost like that entanglement connection between particles, but the connection's always there. I mean, you know, in a close relationship, you've virtually got a psychic relationship anyway, even when both in physical realms. Right, that sounds good. That sounds good, Melinda. Thanks for that. Cynthia Sue Larson. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you don't. Yeah, okay. So coat hangers and straws. Yeah, I mean that's because you're putting them into a sheath so that you're holding them. Yeah, you don't have to have the the holder as such, but yeah, it's fine. They will be amazing. It's because you're amazing, Rebecca, not because the rods are amazing, but it gives you an amazing result. I know what you mean. I mean, this is part of how when you start to dowse, you start to realize the potential of human beings and our process and our ability to connect to the intelligent ether. And I think we're going to start wrapping it up. Yes, good. Well done, Memory Bubble. Absolutely. It's a great healer. It's part of that. Yeah, get to sleep. Good man. Good. I'm glad that helped, Dixie. Always happy to answer your questions directly as well, of course. Cheers, mate. Cheers, bud. Take care. So I think Voikan Full Monty is sort of providing us with a close point here as well. Again, spirit should be eternal, no expiration date, only evolvement into higher beings. I think what's really interesting is that this is one of the big questions that I've never fully for myself, and maybe Seth will answer this, is that if you take, for example, the thanks, Mel. Nice for you to be nice to see you. If we think of somebody that passes away, let's say, for example, my dad. I know that I can talk to my dad, I can talk to the spirit essence, but equally I know that he's moving on and doing other things in a different form. So how does that work? And that's the big question that I'm going to leave you with, because that I do not know. Okay, so take care. Take care, Rebecca. Take care, Maria. Cheers, Nathan. Yeah. Well, yeah, keep practicing though, Maria. Keep practicing for sure. Keep practicing. It does help when you're with a group. So if you know anybody else around you, Maria, I know your sister's really busy, but if you want to get together with your sister and give it a go together, then the combined energy of two people will help. Okay, take care, Lawrence. Cheers. Yeah, talk to you tomorrow, Boykan. Bye, Memory Bubble. Okay, thanks, Stevie. Take care. Bye, Julie. Go in now. Bye, y'all. Bye. Not next week, don't forget.